Now, obviously, we'll be focusing on the match at the Aviva, but seriously, Italy, am I right? First, the under-20s win in France, then the seniors are denied only by a coat of paint. Anyway, it's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harping on Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me is someone earning podcast number 14 to go with a record-setting amount of written articles for our previous incarnation at harpingonrugby.net. He's also the host of a multi-sport pod known as Post to Post Sport. Welcome back to Mr. Ciarán Duffy.
Yeah, Post to Sport, we're going through a bit of a midlife crisis at the moment because I've made an actual logo. I'm making logos for the podcast, and we're renovating, giving our website a bit of a facelift. So it's new year, new me stuff from Post Sport. But thanks for having me back on the pod again.
No problem at all, and happy to return the favor soon. I hear you're doing some more rugby coverage as well over the coming weeks. So just let me know, and I'll be happy to oblige.
Yeah, looking forward to probably kind of sporadic rugby pods throughout the year to go along with our football. So looking forward to getting back to it, kind of returning to podcasting with a bang the last little while. So looking forward to it.
Brilliant stuff. And also with us is someone who may be only earning his fourth pod cap, but who also has 90-odd articles for our old website under his belt, including his first offering way back in June 2012. He's an avid supporter of both Ulster Rugby and the Newcastle Falcons, which of course makes him the Nordy Geordie. Welcome back to Mr. Kristian Ross.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Pleasure to be here. It's been a while.
Great to see you. Okay, so let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Ireland v Wales in round 3 of the 2024 Guinness Six Nations, which was played at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday afternoon. As always, our match wrap pods are brought to you by the Irish Rugby Store at Elvery's. Now, the weather was mostly dry and bright around D4, though it was a bit overcast as Jack Crowley was kicking off towards the North Stand, Ciarán.
Yeah, as soon as Crowley kicked off, I think everyone in Ireland anyway felt like, look, this is a game we should be winning. And I'm sure Kristian will touch on later, there were no moments in the game where it felt like Ireland lost control. There were moments where we weren't as good, but right from the off, we were really on the front foot, but Wales defended really well in that kind of first 20 minutes up until Dan Sheehan got over. Sheehan, he's been a try-score machine. Before that, though, it was just the usual kind of going through the phases. It was a pretty quick start, but in fairness to Wales, they did defend quite well. And, I think just the kind of Wales team, like, look, we hear a lot about transitional seasons and sometimes there's not a lot of patience for that. But, Ireland probably had that under Andy Farrell after the World Cup, before the last World Cup now at this stage, in kind of 2020, 2021. It was probably somewhat transitional, and Wales are probably going through the same thing. Obviously, there's all kinds of things going on with the rugby union over there, which is probably for another podcast and probably for people in the loop to talk about. But yeah, in fairness to Wales, I think they did well, but Crowley kicked a penalty in the 6th minute, and I thought that was the right decision, both to settle Crowley into the game. Just long Crowley, one thing I like about him is if he had missed that kick, I have no doubt that it wouldn't have wrecked his head. And some fly halves, you could even argue Sexton in the early days of his Ireland career missed a few kicks, and then it would kind of get in his head, it would get at him. We hear about confidence players. Crowley is probably a confident player. I mean, he's just always confident. He always, against France, he missed an easy enough kick by his standards. And, he went straight back to it, and he got straight back into the flow of things. So, I think that was a smart decision. But even if he had missed that kick, I don't think it would have knocked his confidence. I think that's a good thing for a fly half to be able to just make a mistake and then drop it. But good decision, just to keep the scoreboard ticking over, kind of put the pressure on Wales as well, just to have to get the next score and to be 3-0 down, set some of the nerves maybe, because sometimes I think when you come into a game like this, you're clear favourites. I mean, Ireland were massive favourites for this game, probably favourites to win by more than they did in the end. I think it just makes sense just to get your noses in front, get that first score. Because as we can see, it was about 20 minutes before getting over the line, and if it had been 0-0, or even if Wales had gotten the penalty, then suddenly there's just that bit of doubt, just that bit of nerves. And Gatland was playing his mind games during the week, so in fairness, like it could have just got under the skin. I mean, in fairness to this Irish team, they've been fairly good at not letting things get to them. Maybe aside from Rugby World Cup quarterfinals, if we're allowed to mention that. But I think it was good that Ireland just kept things, it just got things kicking over, and then from there went through a few phases a couple of different times. Calvin Nash, I think, was quite impressive. He was a player I was a little bit not concerned about, but maybe I was thinking he might not quite be at the level yet. And obviously he only made his debut against France. He's only played 3 games. We don't know what his Ireland career is going to be like. He's done well for Munster, but I was always worried that it just might be a big step up sometime, especially he's coming from Mac Hansen, who's been so good for Ireland. That kind of back three of Hansen, Lowe, and Keenan have been so effective. But in fairness to Nash, I think he does a lot of the simple things well. He does a lot of the kind of work you need your wingers to do that they're not necessarily going to get credit for. And he's run a few good lines, so he was dangerous going forward. Then the build up towards the try there, a couple of minutes before, uh, we had another advantage there outside the 22. Sheehan claimed the ball, and then it was an Irish throw into the line out. Came back to a scrum. It was a bit of kind of back and forth with that. This stage, Ireland had, I think, over 70% possession, so it was looking inevitable. But it was important the score did come, because you can keep knocking on it. Like, possession doesn't win games. At the end of the day, possession helps you win games. So from there was a line out maul. Caelan Doris claimed it. Thought he was really good 2 weeks ago against Italy, and just kind of crept over the line. Sheehan got over. I think Sheehan, he's just really prolific. He's just really like he is world class, and Crowley kicked a good conversion, and from there, I think it was just quite inevitable. I mean, I know Kristian would go through the rest of the half there.
Yeah, they did. It was, I mean, the first 20 minutes, a lot of it was about the Welsh defense. I mean, we were wondering, like, it was a very young Welsh team. And I remember you can even see it even before the match when the teams were in the tunnel. They had a young captain in David Jenkins, and they put the camera almost right in his face. You could tell by him that it was what a big occasion it was for him. Very young, he's leading his team. It was a daunting challenge for this Welsh side, playing an Irish team at the top of their game, and all that going on. But from the start, they did defend well. They got jackals from you always expect a jackal penalty from Tommy Raffel at some stage, but they thwarted us at different times. We had at one stage we had them all seem to be going towards the line, but they managed to kill that, and that was a big win for them as well. That would have boosted their confidence. But on the other hand, like you said, we were dominating the possession, and we were defending well. Also, we were getting jackals from Porter. We were getting jackals from Bundyaki. They weren't getting any joy with the ball at all themselves, and it was just a question of when we could make something happen. But one of the big stories of that first 20 minutes, I think, was the scrums. Now, the lineouts, we've been singing the praise of the lineouts. That was a bubble that had to burst at some stage. You almost wanted to, because it's like, oh, Ireland been perfect at the line out, and everyone's going to say it, and it's like, Jesus, but they just lose one just to get it out of the way, and so we can stop talking about that and we can focus on what we're doing. And a couple, they weren't perfect, and a couple might have been overthrown and stuff, but in the scrums we got a really good nudge on the second one, and we started winning penalties, and that was key, and that's what led to that maul try. And of course, at that maul try, we were a lot more organized. There was no chance. Dan Sheehan had a good handle on it at the back of the maul. When we saw we were moving forward, you saw Lowe joining in, Henshaw, Aki, they were all joining in to get it over the line. So that was that definitely got us on the board, and got the tries moving, and that actually provided a perfect break for me to hand over to Kristian to harp on the second quarter.
Yeah, it was interesting because I think obviously Jack Crowley kicked a penalty, got the ball away, and I think at that point Ireland started to look really, really settled. I think there was a lot of work started to go in, started to move forward. I think James Lowe had a great opportunity. It was great work in the scrum. Again, there was a missed try opportunity around about the 27-minute mark there. And I think at that point, Wales looked. I think Wales were restarting going to the cosh a bit. And then obviously they did get that second try just after the half-an-hour mark through James Lowe. And obviously that's a point where it went to 17-0. I think for me, and we've seen this, we saw this under Schmidt. If that had been, I think 5-6 years ago, they would have went for goal. Do you know what I mean? They have these opportunities. They would have went goal. They would have went to the post, and it's so. And I know we'll go on about this, and it's been, it's been talked about time and time again. But it's just so refreshing to see the attacking intent every single time. To get another bonus point win is just fantastic. But I thought Wales actually toward the end of the half, I thought they actually played well. I think it was almost sort of kitchen sink type stuff. I think they were really starting to go for it. I think their thought was that if they could get a score before half time, then they might be able to worm their way back into it. Obviously, it didn't happen until the second half. But there was they're an improving side. You can only beat, I think, what's in front of you. But I think overall, first half, I mean, it's 17-0. You can't really be, you can't be disappointed with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was all about, we really needed to get that second try, and it was kind of a journey towards breaking down the Welsh defence, breaking down what they were trying to do. Now, obviously, they had to take risk, which means they were giving away a lot of penalties, and it just didn't seem right. I mean, skipping ahead to the end of the game, there were 2 yellow cards for us, which I think both of those were fair. But how the Welsh didn't get one, I'm not really sure. There was an incident in the second half where they stopped one of our attacks, and thought that in itself could have been the yellow, but it just. I think they were lucky to keep 15 on for the entire match. But that said, they still defended well. They made it. They never made it easy for us to break down. So we had to we had to work that extra bit as well. But so that move up to that low try, it took 12 phases. But we still worked it back and forth. I think there's no better man in that position, scrum half, than Jimson Gibson Park. Yeah. And I think he's really good at finding that last pass and knowing which way to go each time. And sometimes maybe he takes the odd risk, but it's a calculated risk, And it was a curious half. Like Wales. They had their chances as well, and our lineout wasn't great, but we were doing well at the scrums. It was a scrappy process, but I really think that we were always in control. I think it's like we always knew, even right up to the end, we knew that there was another score coming, but it was kind of frustrating to watch in a way, but it's kind of the way I was when we had a pod during the week. I had a Welsh supporter on who's done a book. His name is Simon Williams, and the book is Welsh Rugby: What Went Wrong. Perfect title. No, he's what I said to him about the Irish team is that he thought that we'd be totally confident for an Irish win, but that's just not in our DNA as supporters. However we feel, the players don't show that. The players are the ones who show confidence. I was talking about Duffy Jenkins looked in the tunnel before coming out. He looked kind of nervous coming out, but that's never Ireland. Ireland are always match ready. They're ready to go from the start, and they have that. And the confidence is almost what drives them even more than their actual tactics and their approach. But no, 17-0 at halftime. It did look about right, but as always, you're more impressed with the 0 than the 17. Yeah. But listen, it was a decent enough half, but we were kind of expecting more. So anyway, like as you say, the score at halftime was Ireland 17, Wales 0. Now, as any Leinster fan will tell you, albeit reluctantly, a 17-0 lead at the Aviva Stadium isn't 100% safe. And also, this particular Welsh side have already shown they can bounce back from being nilled in the first half. And it started to look like that could actually happen not long after the restart, Ciarán.
I'd nearly gotten over that one before you mentioned it. Still recovering. Haven't been to a game since, actually, so I need to get to one. in fairness to Wales, they came out really fast. They probably needed a score early in the second half to have a chance of like a losing bonus point for Wales would have been a good result in this game, and in fairness, they got that. So yeah, it was a kind of purple patch, I suppose you could call it, is the phrase for Wales. Uh, they they got over eventually for a penalty try. I think it was only about 2 minutes in. Ty Burn got a yellow card. Not sure if Ty Burn was necessarily guilty or it was just kind of a yellow card for one of the forwards kind of things. But in fairness, it wasn't. The discipline went a little bit in the first half, and on Virgin Media they were talking a bit about, look. I remember Joe Malloy saying, "Look, are you not allowed just kind of going to go down a few gears or something if you're winning a game and it's a game you know you're going to win." But then again, like you look at France and New Zealand against the likes of Italy and maybe in the World Cup. I mean, they were well in charge of that game in the first half, and then they went on and really put the screw and nearly ended up with 100 points on the odd occasion. So you could argue here Ireland should have come out to a flyer and yes, 17-0. I mean, you don't have the bonus point was important here, and as we'll see later, it came very late. So I think this was a bit of a wake up call for Ireland, just that you can't relax yet. And if we did this against England or Scotland, I'd be a little bit more worried because I think England are going to be really up for the game. They were able to find a good touch and had a line out ball. It got over the line and it went up to the TMO. Eventually was awarded as a penalty try. Again, I think it was inevitable because we were giving away a lot of penalties early on in the half. I think if you're giving away successive penalties, it's not even that you're giving away a lot of penalties in the game. It's that you're giving away a lot of penalties within the same kind of passage of play. So from there on, Ireland kind of just nudged their way into the game. It seemed like maybe foot off the pedal a little bit. I mean, it was you could argue should have been more urgency to get that third and fourth try. You have to get the third one before you get the fourth, and we were only 17 points up. So I think Frawley generally played well. He moved the game well. He offers that other playmaker side of things, and probably takes some of the spotlight off Jack Crowley as well, who still isn't that experienced at this level. So you can't put too much pressure on him because there's always going to be a lot of pressure anyway on a international 10. At the end of the kind of 60 minutes, there was Bundy Aki got over, went up to the TMO, was called no try for Robbie Henshaw forward pass. Like I think it was good to get over the line even though it didn't stand. I think again it was kind of like in the first half, it took 20 minutes to get over the line. And you see, Christian will talk about the next try, but I think it was a bit sloppy. It was a bit foot off the pedal stuff. It wasn't as impressive, and it's too early to peak too early for the next World Cup. But if we're going to like the bones of this team are going to get past the quarterfinal eventually, which seems to be the big goal. I think that's a bigger goal than winning the Nations Cup type thing that's coming in. If we're going to get there, we probably need to keep up that intensity. And as good as Ireland have been this Six Nations, this 20-minute spell was probably the worst it's been. But it's no harm coming in a game like this because we were always going to win the game. I mean, Wales never looked like winning the game. I mean, they got a penalty try. They didn't really look like scoring again from after that. It never looked like we were losing control of the game. It just looked like we weren't taking the game by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah, I mean, Wales definitely, they started both halves pretty well, and which is they've good coaches. I mean, Warren Gatlin usually knows what he wants out of his team, and I suppose with all the inexperience they have, they'll get to a stage where when they're settled into matches, they'll be able to carry it through to the end of each half. But I think Ireland kind of worked out what was going on in each half and was able to make the right adjustments. But just a special mention, I think, from the Welsh side to Cam Winnett at fullback. I think he was really impressive. In fact, he lived up to his name in many ways, because as a fullback, when there was a high ball, he was calm, and when he was challenged, he'd win it. Even more often than not. Now on the penalty try, I actually thought it was a good spot from Dixon. He did change his bind. I didn't see it at first. I didn't see how it affected, but he does do it. And but the thing is, with the Ty Byrne, I mean, what a return to the pitch! That is one of the best returns to the pitch ever. He comes back on, having been put to the naughty step for pulling down or for affecting a maul, to return just when there's a 5 meter line out again. There's going to be another maul. What does he do? He gets, you might think he might stay out of it in case he gets caught again. No, he gets stuck in, gets on the ball and rips it and steals it. I mean, that's the best. And Mark Robson called him Turnover Tig. So that's I think that's a name that might actually stick if it hasn't already. But also in that half, you had the exchange between Andrew Porter and Garrett Thomas. There was a ruck where I think Thomas had a yellow boot or something that had come off, and Porter was just standing on the edge of the ruck, and he saw it on the ground. He picked it up and flung it behind him, and there was sort of handbags for, he's like, you threw my shoe, and it was like it was a crazy situation, but that's prop life for you. I know all about it. The other thing was Frawley's role, as we were trying to change things up. We were trying to get that all important third try and move, get back get back towards the bonus point, like you were saying we needed. Frawley was showing up a lot at first receiver, which I thought was interesting because, it shows the extra dimension having him at fullback can bring. And so, which kind of tells me that they really have him in mind as the backup fullback. It's not just he's not just there to cover Hugo Keenan, but when he is there, he can actually do other roles. He was doing kick passes. He was showing his creativity, And just one more thing on that penalty try. I just wanted to just to make everyone aware that actually try was mostly my fault, because when I saw the score was 17-0 at halftime, I remember that we nilled Italy in the previous match. So of course I dug into the stats books and found out the last time Ireland conceded, and that was in the 52nd minute in Marseille against France. So of course I put that out there, which meant it was inevitable that Wales were going to score as early as possible in the second half. So that was actually my fault, and apologies to all Irish fans for that. But anyway, listen, seriously, after all that, it was still just a 17-7 as the game ticked over into the final quarter, Kristian.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, then going into the final quarter, I think it was game management stuff from Wales, but in the sense that I think they were more interested in stopping us getting points than they were maybe trying and reduce the deficit of their own. And again, I think that's probably testament, to the way that they are at the minute. They knew that, they knew that they weren't going to beat us up front. They knew they weren't going to beat us in the backs. And we've obviously, I think people have talked about Wales at length and about, how they're a transitional team and all that kind of thing. But it was great, obviously, when got the try through Ciarán Foley. It was great rolling maul before that from the line out. Personally, I hope it made Warren Gatland absolutely furious, because I know he was waxing lyrical during the week, and I think he was trying to stir the proverbial pot. But yeah, and I think what you mentioned there as well about the about the cards at the end of the game. It was frustrating to see James Ryan get binned, because I think that's something that, again, for a long time we haven't seen mistakes like that creep in. And I could be wrong, but I think actually when he got binned, it was for not retreating 10 meters. I think that's what ITV said.
Yeah, well, it was more of a case of we were on a warning, and there was actually, in that particular move, the ref found 3 penalties. So it was just a question of his happened to be the first. I think it was just a question. It was more of a question of a succession of penalties rather than him. But it was, I mean, we were shipping a lot of penalties. It was just when you measure that up against the fact that the Welsh didn't get didn't get one at some stage. You couldn't pick one. I mean, I could only pick one incident where they had a hand in the ruck. When we had a break, we got to the 22, and there was a hand in the ruck, scooped the ball out, and that wasn't binned. But it's just about, the way the game turned out. It's just being a bit finicky, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of refereeing inconsistencies, I mean, we could probably go for a massive tangent here. I mean, France versus Italy as well, their kick, and Scotland, the week before last, and I suppose it didn't really make it didn't make a difference at all to the outcome of the game on this occasion. But again, maybe it's something that needs to be viewed. Because I'm probably going to sound like a real traditionalist here, but I think maybe some of the referees on the current circuit, if you want to call it that, aren't maybe as good as what we had, likes of Owens years ago and Barnes. That's not to say that they're not great officials; they are. But it is incredibly frustrating, when one team is penalised and is sanctioned, and the other team isn't. For similar offences. But yeah, look at the draw. And obviously, like I say, it didn't make much difference. And then the biggest thing for me was obviously getting the bonus point try at the end. I mean, but again, that's what I mean, attacking intent, constantly wanting to try and strive for the best thing. And I mean, 5 out of 5, 15 points out of 15 points, 3 out of 3 now. I mean, for me, we are, I know the GS word is banned, but it does, I am starting to think, we're nearly there. But I will say that I think I always get nervous about when we play England at Twickenham, always, especially because I lived there a few years ago and we got beat, and it was on my birthday as well, so it was the worst birthday ever. And I think Scotland as well. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be a test. It's going to be a real test. And hopefully we won't be making those sorts of errors at the end of games like that. Because that they could easily be one score games. So that James Ryan simping, although it isn't. And again, you talk about being finicky and pinicky. Yeah. It didn't affect the game, but you look at it and you think, well, please don't do that in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, I mean, at least we did show that we were able to convert when it was needed. I mean, like that penalty I said that should have been a yellow card, the hand in the ruck. The Frawley try came from that. We put it into the corner. We won the line out. There were phases, and then again, Gibson Park found that pass, that one pass that got Frawley over the line, and then just after that try, you got Stu McCuskey, big choo-choo Stu, coming on for Nash, and it was his. He did a big hit in the 77th minute. I mean, he's put some great shifts for Ireland in recent times, and it was his hit followed by a Jack Conan counter ruck, which forced the penalties. 77th minute. Now, we weren't done. We didn't give up. I mean, a lot of people were frustrated by that series in that quarterfinal in France, but we had that series. We had a score to win, and we had phase after phase after phase. And this time it worked. We kept going and going. And in the third quarter, we were calling him turnover Tig. Well, this time he was bonus point burn. He was 16 phases in and around the Welsh line. Now, of course, the Welsh have been tackling like demons all day. They would have been on their last legs. We made the most of that. We didn't give up. It was every single carry, 16 phases at the end of a game. I mean, that's something else with their whole bench on, and to be able to turn over the ball every time, not give away penalties, and then fight for the very end and get that over the line. That is a credit to us. It's not great for the old heart. We thought we would have been moaning about a lost bonus point had we not gotten it. But at the end of the day, they used the whole 80 minutes and they got it in the end, and that's the sign of a good team.
100%. I mean, you look at you look at the way that we finish games, and I think it's just a simple case. And I think Andy Farrell has just instilled it that if you keep playing, it's almost like build it and they will come. If you keep playing the way that you're doing it, it will come, and it did in the end. And I think when Taupo went over the try, it was almost like in slow mo when he got through that gap. And you could see the Welsh defenders almost think, oh yeah, that's it. He's through. He's gone over. But yeah, I mean, I think I look at where we are. Grand Slam last year, potential GS this year. and I also look at as well, I think we were briefly mentioning to each other the other day about, the under-20s and how they haven't lost a under-20 Six Nations game now since 2021. And obviously, as you rightly pointed out, there will be sternly tested by England. But, it's not just, it's obviously filtering through, as cliche as that sounds. It's obviously, dripping down or whatever you want to call it. They are, everything seems to be going right at the minute with the national setup. Um, and I think the wonderful thing is as well, of course, is they talked about injuries and they talked about people missing and that kind of thing. There just seems to be such a range of depth now compared to what they used to be, and even when Sexton will get injured and people will be, oh God, Sexton's gone now. First tournament without Sexton, and it just doesn't look like it's bothered them, whatsoever. So it's great to see. It's a pleasure to watch. It's great to be watching Ireland at the minute. But yeah, I'm still nervous about the next couple of weeks. But as you said, that's just in the DNA, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one final mention for Ryan Baird. I always make a note when he goes on a rampage. And we had a situation. Now you go back to just literally the game just before COVID. It was a Leinster match at the RDS, and he was still a rookie, and he was playing alongside Scott Fardy, and he did one of those. He just all of a sudden he broke free, and he's just this big hulking guy running with the ball in open space, and he's tearing in. And I think that everyone's almost afraid to tackle him. And he had one of those here. It was right after the Frawley try, I think, and it was right after the restart. And Kelleher slipped him through, and he was charging down the pitch, and he almost fooled himself in a way. He swayed to the left. If he'd gone to the right at that stage, he would have been easier to get the pass. But he went to the left, and it just fell through. But it's always an amazing sight to see. But anyway, listen, that's a side note. Yeah, it was great. They played right to the end. They got that bonus point try, and the final score was, of course, Ireland 31, Wales 7. All of which brings us to our final thoughts from the weekend, starting with Ciarán.
Yeah, look, 5 points from 5. I think it's a very, very much the kind. If it was the pool stage of the European Cup, I think we'd be happy with that, 4 bonus point wins. But yeah, look, have to be happy with it. I mean, wasn't the perfect display, but ideally would have had the bonus point wrapped up a little bit earlier. But the Six Nations is always going to be a tough competition. I think I have to mention Italy after this weekend. If they had kept up their first half against England, they would have beat them. They were well outmatched by Ireland, but did defend well in parts. And then today, that bit of character, especially after being absolutely, like I remember in the World Cup thinking maybe they could cause France a problem, maybe they could cause New Zealand a problem, not beat them, but maybe cause them a problem. I mean, after all, they did draw 0-0 with New Zealand in 2019, so clearly they have a set a precedent for big results. But I think that they did great to wrestle that back. Scotland as well. There was a time, I'd nearly say with Scotland, they're like where Ireland were before Joe Schmidt took over, maybe before 2009 winning the Grand Slam. They're in that kind of really good team that just can't seem to get over the line. If they manage to beat Ireland in the last game, I think that will be getting over the line to a large extent. But, I think that's going to be a really tough game in the last week because they're going to be really up for it. They didn't do anything in the World Cup. I mean, they were always going to finish third in the group ahead of Tonga and Romania. They didn't really offer anything, and this is 2 World Cups in a row that they haven't offered anything. So I think this is a really important Six Nations for them. They should have beaten France, and I know there was the controversy with the last try. They probably should have been awarded the try. In fairness to Finn Russell, he came out and just said, "Look, they took responsibility," and I think that's really good. Because if you're relying on the last minute try to win the game, you probably didn't do enough throughout the game to win it. As for England, it's an interesting one because again, it's kind of like roles reversal almost. I remember, growing up, it was always England as one of the dominant sides, the Six Nations. Ireland very much struggling, but seemed to always get up to play against England. I think now it's kind of the other way around. Ireland very much the dominant team in the Six Nations, but England will definitely be up to playing us. And I think I think it's certainly not in the Six Nations. I think maybe France did it in the 90s, but it's been a long time since someone's won back to back. England and Scotland are going to be starving to stop that now, because when you look at it, everyone wants to knock Ireland off their perch. So I think that'll be two difficult games, two different games. Maybe won't be as dominant as the Wales win was on the pitch. But yeah, overall, Six Nations, I think, look, Ireland should win from here, but aren't guaranteed to win from here. And I think it would be, I think, like, on paper, Ireland beat England and beat Scotland, but at the end of the day, you have to go out and play the game. I think on paper, everyone would have had France beating Italy, and that didn't happen today, obviously. So yeah, it's a good weekend, and hopefully it'll probably be better for the tournament if Ireland don't win. But I don't support the tournament; I support Ireland. So I hope it's another. I'm hoping in a few weeks we're talking about that. That's the last time I'm going to say that word on this podcast.
I'm going to totally bleep that out.
The GS word. But good, not great win for Ireland. Got the job done, and isn't it great that we can be only content with a bonus point win with 5 points in the 3 games? You know what I'm trying to say, the bonus point wins. Isn't it great that we can only be just happy enough with a bonus point win in the Six Nations?
And actually, for Kristian's final thoughts, it's been quite an eventful week over in Ulster. So maybe you can talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's never boring being an Ulster fan, Jeff. Believe me. Yeah, obviously Dan McFarland out, which I don't think has came to anyone's surprise, really. Obviously, after his comments in the game after the Ospreys game. I mean, it was quite surreal. I actually had to look back through some tweets today, and I almost sort of had a yearly tweet about Dan McFarland. So the first tweet was that I wished him well when he got the job, but I wasn't particularly excited about the appointment. And I think the second year was that he'd done well. You know, he'd almost got where we needed to be, but obviously we again, you know, I think we don't want to use the word bottle jobs, but you know, as always, Ulster the bridesmaid, never the bride. And then I think last season it was sort of, you know, we're on the slide now. Improvement desperately needs to be made, and then obviously the tweet from a couple of weeks ago that I made, which was posted, which was something along the lines of, you know, he needs to go. And I think, I mean, for me, I don't always believe in, you know, bringing in big names and that kind of thing, but you know, for me, I don't think he was ever really the right person for the job. And I think Ulster have got to do a lot of soul searching, because I mean, you know, I always trot out the stat about the fact, you know, how obviously Leinster and Munster have won multiple league titles in, you know, since 2006. Connacht have won one as well, and Ulster have just won absolutely nothing. And it is so frustrating. And I know there is a lot of talk as well at the minute around. I don't think anything's confirmed, but I know there's a lot of talk around finances and that kind of thing. There's a bit of talk around money at the moment, but they need to try and bring somebody in who is going to try immediately hit the ground running, because I think, you know, for years after the sort of McLaughlin days, it was almost like, right, okay, we're building to become a really good team now, and you know, that's I think nearly 10 years ago now. So I just find it bizarre as well, and again, it might sound very harsh, but I just found it bizarre as well that Dan McFarland has taken charge of the most league games, in the most Ulster games in the professional era. Do you know what I mean? By quite some distance as well. And I just think to myself, you know, why did this stick with him for so long? And maybe we're a forgiving bunch up here in the north. Maybe we are. But I think his time was up. Obviously interim coach until the end of the season, and then they need to really, the IOFU and obviously an Ulster branch really need to take a good look and think, you know, where they're going to go next, because you know, I mean, and again, I know social media is no metric to measure anything, but you know, you do see it yourself. I mean, there's a lot more grumbling on Ulster X, as it's now probably known, than there has been in previous years.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, the impression I've always gotten is that, you know, as like I don't know how, maybe Dan should have gone maybe long before this or whatever it was, but it's from what I've heard from Ulster fans or an Ulster X, like you say, is that the problems were there. The problems are there above him. There have been decisions made above him, not just in the Ulster branch, but the way the IRFU deals with the Ulster branch. Now, I'm not saying that David Humphreys coming in for Nusafora is necessarily going to benefit Ulster, because you want him to come in. You want him to come in and be looking at all 4 provinces. But still, whatever new fresh eyes come in, he can definitely realize that is somewhere that does need a bit of work. So hopefully, maybe when that change comes, maybe there'll be a lot more thinking, and Ulster might get themselves sorted.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think Ulster are almost sort of looked at as like the forgotten cousin a lot of the time. And to be fair, I don't really buy into a lot of that stuff. Again, you see it when Ulster fans are saying, "Oh, why such and such not playing for Ireland?" and that kind of thing. And to me, it really doesn't bother me. I mean, you could have 15 Leinster players playing for Ireland. It just does not bother me in the slightest at all. I think we're very parochial in that kind of sense, and we are very provincial and partisan, 3 Ps. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of work to be done, a huge amount of work to be done. And you look what sort of happened out west with Connacht, and where they were, where they've got to, the kinds of talent as well that they're producing too. And I think that's another thing too as well. I think it's maybe not just about results and stuff. It's about producing players too. And there's a couple who have came through the last couple of years where you think to yourself, God, they're good players, but it's still, there's just a hell of a lot to have been done. And like I say, no trophy now since 2006. We're coming on 19 years next year. And I mean, I think Ulster fans pretty much all they want is a trophy. That's all they want. And hey, you never know, they might go well in the Challenge Cup. But I'm sure that'll be a agonising loss in the semi-final of that as well if we make that tournament. So if we make it through the semi of that tournament.
Well, that's brilliant, lads. We're going to leave it there. Many thanks again to Ciarán and Kristian for joining me. Hope to have you both on again soon, lads. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
As for our next batch of Harpin, look out for our 80 plus column on Tuesday. Then we turn our attention back to the URC as Leinster head to the Welsh capital. We'll have a preview on Friday, and we'll be recording the wrap pod on Sunday evening. As ever, keep up with our content on social media. The links are in the program notes. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.